So I guess I could say I have this sort of obsession with the middle way. And I like calling it the middle way. Started thinking of it more along the terms of middle way when, listening to teachings from Buddhism about the middle way. And Buddhism doesn't really present it as mathematics or geometry or whatever, but if you go through Buddhism teachings extensively enough, you'll see that geometry is relevant to them. As a philosophy, the history of philosophy has always had geometry incorporated into it. And I think that's about logic. And so philosophy and logic are hand in hand. Is it logic that gives rise to philosophy? Is it philosophy that gives rise to logic? So that's the relationship there when it comes to logic and philosophy. They could be one and the same thing. Again, it wouldn't be philosophy if there wasn't a whole lot of thinking and questioning and doubting and reconsidering. It wouldn't be philosophy if it didn't have all of that. And at the same time, would it be logic if you didn't put it through all of that? So I'm not going to get lost in the chicken and the egg thing. But with Buddhism, that's not where I got the obsession with the middle way. It is with music. As a musician, playing piano, I played harmonica for a while, but when I got into playing piano, I'm trying to focus in on the musical notes. You'll see C, C sharp, D, E flat, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, all of that. When I got into playing piano, that's when I got into music theory, which is basically the logic by which music is composed, which has to do with the pitch content and constructing harmonies out of that. Harmonies that shape melodies and harmonies that shape chords and all of that. So this here is a rendition of pitch content. So I say a rendition, meaning that there's different ways to render pitch content, or that there's multiple ways to model an idea, or to model a function, or to model a system in operation. I'm using language, speaking English here. I hope it's English I'm speaking. If my English isn't all that great, people might say I'm not speaking English. I'm not going to argue about that. That's a whole deep philosophical hole that we can get into. So modeling, how we model an idea, how we model something logically that doesn't have a form that suits our ability to recognize what's going on with it. So we hear music all the time. People who don't play music, you don't have to be a musician to appreciate music and develop your own understanding and relationship with music. You don't have to be a musician to have all of that. So this is one way of relating to music. And what this is, it relates to music, and it is a rendition of the pitch content for music. And so the pitch content, the most basic and simple way to look at it is the chromatic scale of notes, which is basically the sound spectrum out of which your notation is derived. A sound spectrum going from the lowest notes to the high, or is this the highest note to the low? But either way, a smooth, fluid progression. If you were looking at a temperature field, or the experience of temperature in physics, you would see a temperature rating, and it gradually changes upwards. Or if you're in the high temperature, you can gradually change it downwards, or it can, through various means, change upwards or downwards. You know, if you get a heat source that's increasing, then you'll get temperature that's increasing. Or if you get a heat source that's decreasing, you'll get a temperature that's decreasing. So you can scale up and down the range of temperature. You can scale up and down the range of viscosity. Is something very watery? Can you make it thicker and even thicker and thicker and thicker until at what point it becomes solid? Water, you add temperature to it, and it slowly starts to loosen up until it just wafts away like smoke. It becomes steam. Or you take temperature away from it, and it slowly starts to solidify. And so the very fluidity or solidity of water scales back and forth between fluidity and solidity, and even gaseousness. If you make it too hot, it'll move away from solidity and move even away from watery type of fluidity and move into gaseousness. When you study fluid dynamics in the modern way, fluid dynamics tends to see fluidity in gases and water alike. And with me looking on the large scale of things, say on the planetary scale, like the entire surface of the earth, it's solid geology, rock formation. Everybody naturally knows that the ultimate symbol of hardness is rock. It's rock hard. That's how you know something is the epitome of hardness. So geologically, and yet when you go to a large enough scale, you'll see fluid dynamics even in rocks. So how we identify things in itself is very fluid. How we characterize things in itself is very fluid. Ultimately, we can't be washing around like wild, chaotic waves all the time. So we have to find a form, a way of latching on for useful processing and rationalization. So you have sound spectrum go up and down the scale of sound. Is it deep tone? Is it high tone, low tone? And it progresses just like temperature or viscosity, all of that. So we're scaling, and it's the chromatic scale. The chromatic scale. And it would go da, da 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 da. And I don't know if I applied the accurate pitch for pitch from my voice, but the progression of scaling downwards, that's what I was emulating there with my voice. That's what I was trying to capture. And that's what this represents, notation. And out of each note, you can found or make the foundation of a scale. And so that's what all these numbers are about. So you want to read, even though you can go up and down column wise or row wise, this is a row. We're going by the row. So the chromatic scale is the column reading. You read by the column for the chromatic scale progression, and then read this way for the major scale progression, except the major scale progression is composed differently, not quite an even progression. It's cut up into parts and pieces that are then added together in equation form. So I'll explain that. So you have this as the chromatic scale, and then this represents the content of the major scale. So out of a chromatic scale, you can make a C major scale. Out of a chromatic scale, you can make a C sharp scale. You can make a D scale, an E flat scale, an E scale. You can make a scale out of each and every note in the chromatic scale. You can make a major scale or a minor scale and a variety of other scales that are alterations of major and minor. You can make a variety of scales out of each note within the master scale, and the master scale is the term I'm now using for this chromatic scale. The chromatic scale is the ultimate scale, the master scale. Now, you can reconfigure your chromatic scale to have more than 12 notes. It's just how fine do you want to dice up your spectrum. You want to have, in a circle, you would give it 360 degrees. Now, I'm sure there's a very good mathematical reasons for having 360 degrees in a circle. But if you really look at it, if you wanted, you could divide a circle into as little as 90. You can divide a circle into as many as 1,000 sections and reconfigure the value of a degree as however you want. But eventually, that's so fluid, it could be anywhere and everywhere to create the ultimate confusion between all people. So we tend to settle on standards that everyone can work around, and that way it's easier to share ideas and stuff and work together for a broader expansion of the overall learning experience. So we just have 12 notes in the chromatic scale. The C major scale, or any major scale, will now take 7 notes. Chromatic scale is 12 notes. The C major scale will be constructed out of 7 of those chromatic notes. The C major scale will take C, it will take D, it will take E, it will take F, it will take G, it will take A, and it will take B. There's B is down there. There's B down there. I have to zoom it into view. Ah, there it is. So it will take C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, back to C. And those are 7 notes. A major scale will be constructed out of 7 notes. And that's why you see 7 here. And then I put 7 plus 0. those are the notes used. Why do I have 7 and a column for 0, a column for 7 and a column for 0, and then another column? Why did I do that? Redundant. That's why I did it. White notes. If you remember piano, you have white notes and black notes. So a C major scale will use all white notes, so it gets its content of 7 notes from the white notes. All 7 come from the white notes, and 0 of the 7 come from the black notes. And so you've used 7 out of your 12. Now you have 0 white notes remaining. Of all the white notes available to use, you use 7, and now you have 0 remaining in your chromatic scale as remnants. So these are the notes used out of the chromatic scale, and these are the notes remaining after you took what you used here, what's remaining. So you use 7 white notes and 0 black notes, and in the chromatic scale of what you have available to use, you have 0 white notes remaining, the remnant set and the used set. You have 0 remaining, and because you didn't use any black notes, you have remaining here black notes. And so if you add the notes that you used and the notes that remain because you didn't use them, it should add up to 12. 7 notes used in the C major scale plus the 5 notes that were not used in the C major scale add up to the 12 notes from which all the notes were derived, and those 12 notes were derived from the chromatic scale, which is a 12-note scale. So now when you go to C sharp, it's different note selection. It's going to have a different tonal signature, and that comes from using different notes in a different geometric configuration. So you select notes differently, but the ultimate math of selecting 7 notes to make a major scale will remain the same, and that out of the 12 you take 7 and you have a remnant set, and the remnant plus what you use should add up to be 12. What you use should add up to be 7. The remnant added to what you use should be 12. And you'll see that, everything adding up to be 12 here. And, okay. So you'll see here 2 plus 5 in what we use. We use 2 white notes. No, yes, 2 white notes and 5 black notes. And that's what we use. 2 plus 5 adds up to be 7. Here, for the D scale, we use 5 white notes and 2 black notes. 5 plus 2 adds up to be 7. In E flat major scale, we used 4 white notes, 3 black notes. 4 and 3 adds up to be 7. Here, 3 white notes, 4 black notes. 3 and 4 adds up to be 7. 6 white notes, 1 black note. 6 and 1 add up to be 7. 2 white notes, 5 black notes. 2 and 5 add up to be 7. 6 and 1 add up to be 7. 3 and 4 add up to be 7. 4 and 3 add up to be 7. 5 and 2 add up to be 7. 2 and 5 add up to be 7. So what you're using to construct a major scale, no matter which root major scale it is, it'll always use 7 notes from the 12-note chromatic scale. And it will combine those 7, it'll select those 7 notes in a specific way to suit its tonal signature. And you'll have your remnant. If you're using 7 out of 12, you should always have 5 remaining. Here, 0 plus 5 is 5. 5 plus 0 is 5. 2 plus 3 is 5. 3 plus 2 is 5. 4 plus 1 is 5. 1 plus 4 is 5. 5 plus 0 is 5. 1 plus 4 is 5. 4 plus 1 is 5. 3 plus 2 is 5. 2 plus 3 is 5. And all of these added together. 5 plus 2 plus 2 plus 3. 4 plus 5 is 9. 9 plus 3 is 12. Any of these that you look at, they'll all add up to a common total. They'll all add up to a common remnant set, and they will all add up to a common set of used notes to construct the major scale. Now, if you are constructing a minor scale, because where you have a major scale, you will have a relative minor scale that you can construct. And a relative minor scale will be constructed out of the same notes. The notes used to construct the major scale will be used to construct its relative minor. Same exact notes. So you'll be looking at the same, this will apply. This modeling will apply for minor or major, except relative minor, now this will be C major. It will also represent A minor scale, the most basic A minor scale. You have variations of the minor scale. So the most basic, straightforward minor scale, A minor to C. And so each of these have their own specific relative minor. That gets into more complexity than we need to. So this is simple addition. This is simple addition going on here. That's it. Simple addition. But it is all structured together in a grand total system for how music operates, basically music theory. Out of this grid work, harmony happens, and harmony grows more complex from here, but it follows this framework. And you can see how simple addition patches together, little modules of simple addition patched together in a complex array. And the simple addition patterns, the pattern of how there'll always be 7 here, there will always be 5 on this side, always 7 on this side, and 5 and 7 will always add up to be 12, and 7 on this side, 5 on this side will always add up to be 12. That's a pattern in itself. But then if you look on the larger scale, rather than each individual line, analyzing it for a pattern, look at everything together. And you see these encirclements. What are those, worms or caterpillars? I'm a naturalist, so I like to use models that remind me of nature. Little worms making the connection. And so you'll see here 7. That's just a straight line across. In the middle, these are 12. So at the beginning and at the middle, you'll see a straight line across. And at the very bottom, you'll see the straight line across, which is basically just the repetition of this. And here you'll see a set of 2s. And in reciprocation, but opposite, you'll see a set of 5s. So it's like a line progression of 2s in reciprocal reflection, or you can see how it creates like a pairing pattern. They're reciprocating something, they're reflecting something, they're gathering around a middle way, a type of symmetry. So middle way and symmetry. So symmetry is what this is about. Balancing things out. Equations, how 7, 5, 12 balance the equation. 2 sides of an equal sign. There's the equal sign. The middle way is the equal sign, and things want to balance on both sides. It's a function. It's a mechanical function that works around balance. And symmetry, the middle way. Logic, music, mathematics, So this side, that side, this side, this side. Here you see sets of threes. Here you see sets of fours, making that same symmetrical pattern. And then all of a sudden a change here, something different, sets of ones. And then you get to the middle, a straight line at the beginning and then the middle. And then on the opposite, you see the reflection. So what you see on this side is a reflection of this side. You see 1, 1, and 4. Here you see 1, 1, and 4. You see 4, 4, and 1. Here you see 4, 4, and 1. Here you see 3, 3, and 3. Here you see 3, 3, and 3. 2, 2, and 3. 2, 2, and 3. And 5, 5, and 5. So even on a much grander scale, so in just this little segmentation, you see reflection, symmetry trying to happen in this geometrical form. You see it happening. But all of this combined, this and this and this, makes a half of the whole system. This makes a half of the whole system. And this half of the whole system is a mirror reflection of this half of the whole system. You can see 1, 1, 4 reflecting 1, 1, 4. You can see 4, 4, 1 reflecting 4, 4, 1. And just the most basic equation here, adding 7, 0, 0, and 5, adding all those numbers together, adding to 12, two sides of an equation, and everything balancing out according to principles of symmetry, the middle way. And that's where I got into the middle way. Sorry about this thing saying created with my scans. I did this all by hand, writing it out long time ago, what, 2000 and before 2010. The my scans done around 2010, maybe 2012, who knows, when I finally got things on computer, when I finally got into the world of computers, then I decided to stop carrying around papers, which I had to redo over and over again as they got moldy or tattered or whatever. And I got just the cheapest scanning app, and because it was free, they make me do advertising for them, which was anything I scan gets a stamp of their name, so everybody sees that it was my scan that did it for them. And so maybe now you want to use my scans, but I doubt you would want to use my scans now that they have their stamp all over everything. You can't see, well, the first one worked well enough. So anyway, the middle way. Here is another way of looking at the pitch content of music and the geometric relationship going on in the whole systemization for music theory. What makes the composition of music systematic and thus predictable in the sense that you can follow what's going on. And that's how musicians follow each other without having to read sheet music. You have musicians able to just play together and follow each other like they know what they're doing. And there's just an understanding of the system by which things go. So the model before was a row and column modeling. This takes the same chromatic scale, C, C sharp, D, E sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, back to C. The same, line that was run as a column or run as a row, that same line is now wrapped around itself to make a circle to show the relationship in cycle, because you have this mirror reflection between one half of the spectrum and the other half of the spectrum. And since it's a mirror reflection, you should be able to fold the thing around itself and still have the two sides reflecting each other. And so this particular module is for plotting, like a graph, plotting the form and shape, which essentially gives the function of the major scale, which is also its relative minor. So the blue line is the outline of the major scale, C major scale, which goes from C to D, from D to E, from E to F, from F to G, from G to A to B, and B back to C. And it makes a very specific shape, a 7-sided shape, because the major scale, once again, is made out of 7 notes. And each note is represented by a side. C note represented by the side that runs from C to D, D note represented from the side that runs from D to E, and on and on. And you'll see that the proportions on this side mirror the proportions on this side. From B to C, a single step. From F to E, a single step, mirrored on both sides. From C to D, a double step. From D to E, a double step, and mirrored on both sides. Both sides of this line. So this dotted line is the line of symmetry, giving the symmetrical frame of reference for the pattern here. So the shape, the form establishes a pattern, and within all of that comes the function. Now, you understand what I mean by function when you functionally play these notes on your instrument. That's a mechanical function, and you're playing according to the form and pattern. So here, this is a 5-note shape, a 5-sided shape, which is the remnant. So you've used the 7 to construct a major scale or its relative minor. Out of the whole chromatic scale, you selected 7, specific 7, which is a particular pattern. You select 7 according to the pattern that they establish. You could select any 7 in any random order, but you wouldn't get the function, the musical composition function that we recognize as a good harmonic music. You recognize music that's got good harmony, and you recognize music that doesn't, or you recognize music that breaks harmony up in such a stinky way that you just have to love it. It's too exotic to not be drawn in by it, no matter how ill or fat or stinky it is. And that's what the acquired jazz taste type of thing going on. But there's a logic to it, a system to it. So you selected your 7 according to geometric logic, and the ones that you didn't use still remain. So this represents the remnant. And you notice the remnant shares the same line of symmetry. These steps mirror each other. These steps mirror each other across the line. And then this line is all off to itself. But still, it can be divided by a line of symmetry. And so these rules of construct and symmetry are what guide your choices from there. So you start with a scale, and within the scale you play around searching for melodies. And when you start to do that with reference to your symmetry, your middle way, and balancing things out, you start to find music composition that people seem to naturally agree with and find very entertaining and alluring. And so the mind of stories about the world, no matter what, seems to mesh and interlace very well with the function of music, just music playing along. And all of a sudden you can run all kinds of stories in your head that seem to flow very well with the music. It even promotes and inspires that, to the point that songwriters now don't just play these notes according to this system. They write songs, which are basically stories that go along with it, and it fits. And then you'll have emotional experiences according to that. Maybe it's a love song. Maybe it's a song about how hate got you down. And then there you go. You have the duality of love and hate. And between love and hate, there's a middle way. And that middle way essentially is us. And where we fall across that line is whether it's love or hate. Or get up and get down. So are you up or are you down? Or this is the upside, is this the downside? And again, we have that duality and somewhere in the middle way, but it all centers around the middle way, which is neither this side nor that side. Essentially, the line is saying it's either nothing or it is everything combined. And then this whole duality isn't about one being separate from the other. It's about all of it, and it goes into duality for reflection. One side reflecting the other. One side here reflecting this side. And I modeled it here like this in this circle with geometry, and you see one side reflecting the other. And then in the previous modeling with row, column and row, you saw the numeric equations adding things up, and it created a geometric image. They were one side reflected the other side. So this got me obsessed with the middle way, and I started thinking that the very shape of logic, leave music, go away, go to mathematics, go to other sciences, go away from science and go into art, or go into the very mind from which we dabble in all of these things. And Buddhism, I started off talking about Buddhism, and Buddhism talking about the middle way. And you get into it and you start to, well, at least I could start to see the pattern that in between it all is a nothingness and an emptiness around which all things reflect each other across the line of nothing and emptiness. That in the middle way, it's insubstantial or non-substance, and on either side of that is substance. So something contrasted by nothing. And so that pattern, how extensive is its presence in everywhere. So I did electrical work, and sure enough, I have to be aware of the negative charge and the positive charge, staying apart, but then coming together in dynamic ways for your function. What functions you want for the electricity? You want to light up a bulb to get light. You want to heat up a filament to get heat. You want to turn a rotor to get mechanical forces to drive something. And so where you cause your negative and positive charge to meet, and where you cause them to go their separate ways and stay on their independent side of that middle way. And you've got the basics of working with electricity. And then where there's electricity, there's magnetism, the electromagnetic phenomena. And so you look at your magnets, they either repel or they attract. And that's two different functions together around the same thing. And it would make you think opposites, negative charge, positive charge. They must be opposites, negative pole, positive pole, or is it North Pole or South Pole for magnets? And one repelling, one configuration or pairing repels, another configuration or pairing attracts. And is it really about opposition or dynamic pairing? And where they appear separate, are they not still part of the same system, just holding down their end or their side of the reflection going on? So thinking about that, and philosophy, the way we think, the way we rationalize, where can we find those dynamics where we have duality? And how are we perceiving duality? Are we perceiving duality in a sense of separateness and opposition that needs to fight it out, that ultimately one must banish the other? And yet in the raw world of physics, you see the duality, but they're not really in opposition. And even when you get them to oppose, they create mechanical forces that cause them to function, and that function is still both sides functioning together in what still is a common cause, the negative and positive charge, one used to push the other away in magnetic forces, and you'll start to get a motor to cycle around itself, never separating away from itself, just around itself, maintaining the whole. And looking at mirrors, you look in the mirror. On one side of the mirror is the real substance, and in the mirror is just the reflected image. But then there's a whole lot of deep thinking to do about that. The nature of imagery in the mirror, the nature of reflection going on in the mirror, the geometry of your optical processing in your eyes. Your eyes themselves, the eyeballs, have some reflection going on the inside there. In the glass of the mirror, there's refraction going on. The silver coating behind the glass, there's the substrate, the element, the atomic structure. There's geometry there determining how reflection happens. So I've spent the better part, actually all of, since 1998, when I first got into this geometry of music, when I first drew out the first circle, searching for, the geometric patterns that would be there. 1997, maybe 98, and just always thinking about it. And the more I learned about things outside of music, finding those relationships. So finding relationships between the middle way pattern that revealed to me through music, finding how it relates to all kinds of things outside of music in the world. And I just kept finding them one after the other. I started looking at mathematics as everybody wants to make things into equations. What Einstein's equation for energy, everybody's like, yeah, the holy grail is to get yourself a magic equation, and then you're a master of mathematics. So what is the equation in itself? And equation, the very word equation, comes from the equal sign. So the equation, if it's a true equation, classic equation, there's got to be an equal sign. And if there's an equal sign, there's two sides of the equal sign, and there's processes on both sides the equal sign. And what they reflect is a common value, but the way in which they present that value is different. The way they construct that value on either side of the equation sign is different. So generally, the pattern you see in equations is one side of the equal sign will have the complex construct for the value that they're dealing with. And then the other side of the equal sign will have the simplified construct. Hopefully it's as simple as just a single, whole, basic, juicy number, you know. And then when you get into numbers themselves, those are unit values of what? And then frame of referencing. And so you can get into all kinds of philosophical stuff around that. So it never truly simplifies, except to the extent of your purposes in the matter. Is it simple enough for your purposes in the matter? And then you stop there and say, that's what the world is. It's what works for me as far as my purposes at this point in time, because things change. We change, you change. And our purposes and intents will change over time. So you have equation, two sides of the equation, and things going on either side, and they're trying to reflect two ways of expressing the same thing. And so that looks very clean and symmetrical. So where does chaos, brought all of this into order? The idea, there's a middle way that's the balancing factor between all things. It helps simplify, it helps make everything look ordered, a system that you can work with. But still, the semblance of chaos is still out there. So I started to look into chaos. Where do things go apart? Order and chaos. But then even looking at the very subject of order and chaos, there in itself is a duality. Order, and then its opposite, chaos. So even turning to chaos to contradict order is in itself giving rise to the very middle way order that I've established here. You've just opened up a whole nother contrast, order and chaos, which is a reflection of each other. One structuring of it, which is very, very complex, so complex that we can't grasp it, and thus we call it chaos. And then the other, you've grasped it and seen a systemization to it, and that's when it begins to look like order. All of the music theory systemization that I showed, it can look like total chaos to people who don't play music or know music theory. So that in itself tells you that the difference between order and chaos begins in the mind and ends in the mind. So the nature of logic and the mind is where it goes and where it comes from. And so I started to look at the mind. And everybody likes to think that the mind is the brain. So I said, okay, I'm not going to worry about whether the mind is the brain or isn't the brain, but you can say that a lot of mind activity involves the brain. So there's nothing wrong with looking at the brain and thinking that it's the mind. It may not be the totality of mind, but it definitely is there for servicing what we experience as the mind. And so just look at the brain and the higher brain, where the modern intelligence for the logic to come up with music and music theory, where you have that line of symmetry. Even if you say, okay, it's the brain that did that, humans invented music slowly and gradually and came up with what we have is this amazing system that seems to go around the middle way. symmetry and complex orders built from that, and music just goes all over the place with song after song, styles, language goes along with it. So I looked at the brain from the top, and you have that line going down the middle, and there's the brain, two sides of that line, and that's the higher brain, the newer, more advanced part of the brain for philosophy and thinking and all of that. And so I started thinking about the brain, the way the brain is structured, and why it would be split down the middle like that. And looking at that split down the middle through music theory and other ways helped me a lot when thinking about why the brain would be made like that. And so we're split down the middle in more ways than just the brain when you look at it from the top. We have two eyes on either side of the face, split down the middle, and they might be taking in images from two different sides, but what we see after the end result of the two eyes taking in their image, we don't see two images, we see one image. And same thing with music. When I'm playing, composing music, two sides of the symmetry, I don't even think about the symmetry. I do the analysis afterwards. I just enjoy my music naturally, and then later think about it. Or sometimes I'll do the music, play it, and think about it and analyze, go to different modes and stuff. And I use two hands from two sides of my body to come up with one piece of music. Play one song, left hand, right hand side together, and it's all one song, and the people who hear it as one song. And the music theory coming from both sides of the line of symmetry, it produces one piece of music in one system. And so the eyes, two different eyes looking and seeing only one image, even though there's two different images, one image in each eyeball, but the mind sees one image. Two different functions from your hands, one on the left hand, one on the right hand, except what you're doing is one job. You're working with your hands. It's one job to your mind, not two different jobs, two different hands. Playing music, two different hands, one left hand piano, right hand piano. It's just one song I'm playing. That's how my mind does it. Two legs. I don't have two different legs and each walking off in a different direction to split me down the middle. I am split down the middle in that crack down there between my legs on the backside. But that's just superficial. At the core of the matter, they're joined. They're joined around an empty space of middle way, and they work together. Otherwise, chaos. But then again, would there be a middle way if there wasn't chaos to counter reflect or contradict order? So I started looking at chaotic systems where I could water, just turbulent water in the ocean, and I started finding predictability there, the way the water at the beach sloshes around the sand and the rocks, and started finding predictability and order by which it operates. It was just so complex in the sense that a conglomeration of simple things, but a diversity of function of simple things compiled in a high population of those things in one system of function. So a high population of simplicities and a high population of diverse simplicities, and they begin to work together, and it's hard to keep track of what's going on, even though at the core of it, it's very simple, and it adheres to very simple rules that appear everywhere, like the very rule of the middle way appearing everywhere, which is what makes equations possible, which is what makes mathematics possible. Simple rules that govern the whole thing all the way through. And those rules can be broken. and are contradicted, but still they're contradicted around the prime basis of those very rules themselves. Like, you can contradict order by bringing in chaos, but then you've created that middle way between chaos and order. You've created that middle way once again by introducing chaos to reflect against order. And within ordered systems, I've shown you where the middle way exists within order. So then to introduce chaos against order, I had a hard time seeing how all of a sudden that verifies or justifies truth in chaos as just purely chaos. So I had to accept for myself that it's my mind. It's what my mind grasps and what it doesn't grasp. So continue to address chaotic systems. And the more I did, the more I started gaining skills at predicting outcomes in chaotic systems and predicting according to a system which has order. I latch onto the right things in the chaotic system and see a pattern, an ordered pattern, and follow it, and it allows me to understand things well enough, and chaos begins to fade away and predictability starts to come in. So there's always still some chaos left, which means there's still a lot for the mind to catch up with. And so I'm more about the mind being defined by the middle way. The universe isn't made up of a middle way in particular. And when you look at Buddhism, their definition of the middle way adds up to emptiness and nothingness. That in between all things, no matter what side you take, what position you take, it's always going to be around the middle way. And the middle way will always prevail, whether the side you took falls apart or the side opposing you falls apart. Either way, the middle way always remains. And that's where you go for balance. That's where you go for redress and, regrouping and try to look for a deeper understanding, a way out or a way in to whatever your predicament is. And so it's not defined as anything particular, that it has to be order, that it has to be chaos, that it has to be good or bad, that it has to be day or night, or positive charge or negative charge, or South Pole or North Pole, or whether it has to be a man or a woman or a child or an adult. Anything that we can use in the illusion of opposition, where one has to expel the other and only one side can be in existence. So I just say it's my mind. I just have to think of the middle way in terms of it just being my mind, that it doesn't exist, and yet it does exist. If I think of it, therefore it is. If I think I am, therefore I am. That's okay. And if I think I'm not, then therefore I'm not. If I think it isn't, then it isn't. And so it's all of the above. And if the possibility includes the idea or the experience of nothing, then it includes that. It includes nothing. So it's not to make the middle way or symmetry the answer to it all. It's just to say that amid all of it, there just isn't an escape of the middle way. You can think your way into complexities beyond, but it will still always be there. And it makes sense that way, like the guiding line of a compass. In all of reality, beyond frame of reference, all there is not being, or if you're being, you're going to be lost, aimless, purposeless, no ambition, whatever. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but in all of possibility, other options are part of all of possibility. And that brings up more to the idea of reasons, good reasons for whatever. So maybe I've said enough, maybe I haven't, and that's two sides of the middle way. So I'll just leave it there, and everybody that can listen to music and hear it and appreciate it is going to listen to music. And it'll be the middle way playing itself out in the form of music being played, as sure as the split down the middle of your brain that's taking things in for understanding, as sure as being split down the middle of your face for two ears, one on each side, but hearing the same song, the same music, not as two different things, but as one. The eyes seeing the dance and the instruments being played by the musicians, and not seeing them as two different images from the two different eyeballs, but seeing one image. You're dancing your butt off, and your butt split down the middle isn't two different dances, two different legs going two separate ways. It's all there together as one, in one dance, to one music, to one experience. And it can go both ways. Maybe it's a woman dancing, maybe it's a man dancing. Two different sides of what it is to be a human, a man or a woman. And then in the middle way, we'll just say all of possibilities between that. And then you start to hear the story of people get complicated over the story of gender. And maybe it is complicated, remember? Chaos and complexity, order, and the root simplicity behind all of it, all of possibility is there, and it's contained within and around the middle way. And ultimately, if you try to imagine just all life is chaos, it's all gone and let go after that. And is that really the goal, to just throw it all away? No value for it? Well, maybe at some point you get fed up and that's what you want to do, but we change, things change, and then your mind changes, and then you want to get it all back from chaos. Well, hello, order and balancing things out. And then you're like, well, why am I so wishy-washy between throwing it away and getting it all back? Well, again, that's that two sides of the middle way. And you can't escape it no matter what you do. And so even if you decide to appreciate it for what it is or not appreciate it for what it is, those are two options around the same thing, the middle way. And if you look at it mathematically, you'll see symmetry. So you could say it's symmetry, but it's much more. You can look as far out in the universe, look at it scientifically, look at it artistically. Either way, you're looking at it from within yourself. So look within yourself. Look at yourself anatomically, you'll see it there. Look at yourself spiritually, you'll see it there. So you find yourself in it and you decide, okay, I want to escape it. Guess what? You just opened up escaping versus not escaping. And hello, within that is the middle way. Between that is the middle way. So what does that mean? Give up escaping because you can't escape? Well, it wouldn't be the middle way if it didn't have escaping on the option list and not escaping also on the option list. True balance would be the middle way between those two. So yeah, maybe I've said enough. Maybe I haven't. I'll be stuck in the middle of that for as long as it takes for me to come back and say more.